Hey everyone, it's Blue here at Blue Bears Games, and for today's video, I will be showing you 5 commanders under $5 that will make your friends hate playing you, Part 2. It's been a little while since I did the first part, and a bunch of new sets have been released since then, so I figured now would be a good time to do a second video with a whole new slate of commanders that have dropped below the $5 price tag finally. If you haven't watched the first part, I highly recommend watching that video as well, because there are some doozies in that one. So let's just jump right in with the first one for this new list, Krenko Mob Boss. When I first did this in March of 2023, he was hovering just around the $5 mark, but a slew of reprints have dropped his price down to about half of that, which means his appearance on this list shouldn't be much of a surprise. So what about Krenko would make people hate playing you? Well, for one, he's one of those commanders that you just see everywhere. Just about everyone I know has a version of Krenko, and for good reason. He's easy to build for somewhat cheap and can be competitive on almost any budget. Just combine cards like Umbral Mantle and or Thornbite Staff with Ashnod's Altar and or Skirk Prospector, and you can amass an infinite goblin token army like there's no tomorrow. Of course, you'll want ways to win besides just combat, so cards like Goblin Bombardment and or Impact Tremors fit very nicely into any build centered around Krenko, and it pretty much becomes an auto win after these hit the board. So while Krenko requires himself plus at least 3 or 4 other cards to combo off properly, Niv Mizzet Perrin at only $2 and some change needs itself and only one of 2 other cards to start doling out some major damage. When enchanted with either Curiosity or Ophidian Eye, all you need to do is simply draw a card or deal damage with Niv to start a loop of drawing cards and dealing damage. The only worry a Niv player has is drawing out their entire library before dealing enough damage to win. However, much to the chagrin of every person facing a Niv Mizzet Perrin deck, Blue also has multiple ways to win by drawing out their library instead of losing. Simply adding either Laboratory Maniac, Thassa's Oracle, and or Jace Wielder of Mysteries, you could snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. There is a reason that some are calling for the banning of Thassa's Oracle, and this type of build is just one of many. Up next is a commander that is under 50 cents, and I actually play, so I know from experience that people hate playing against it. So much so that I've considered just retiring it recently, but unfortunately playing Talrand Sky Summoner is just the style of Magic that I like to play. Talrand can be built both on a budget and not on a budget, because all you have to do is add a bunch of counter magic and cheap card draw spells, and you'll amass a horde of flying 2/2 drakes in no time. On top of that, for relatively cheap, you can add in the Isochron Scepter and Dramatic Reversal combo for an endless army of 2/2 flying drakes. This deck hits the salt button on 2 levels, because not only can it be frustrating to take on an infinite flying army, but apparently there are many people who don't like having their spells countered. Up fourth on today's list is a card that started off above $5 when it was released, dipped just below $5 for a short period of time, rose back above $5, then got added to a box set recently and dropped in price to under $2, so it's the perfect candidate for this list. I'm talking about Lathril, Blade of the Elves. Lathril is a hated commander because it can win in multiple ways and quickly if left unchecked. You can go the basic tribal/typal route and go tall, also known as Voltron, using Anthem-style effects elves like Elvish Archdruid and Elvish Champion, plus a wide array of any of the other creatures that have this effect. Then add ways to make her unblockable, like Rogue's Passage. Or you can go wide by adding ways to make a bunch of elf tokens using cards like Elvish Warmaster and Lyssalana Huntmaster. Both of these tribal/typal strategies require large amounts of elves to do what you want, which leads to her third ability that makes it so you don't even have to use combat to win if the board is clogged. You simply need a lot of elves on the board to activate her last ability, and you can instantly drain each opponent of 10 life. Being able to do this just a few times a game will surely lead to some quick victories. The only caveat to this is it requires you to tap her plus 10 other elves, but elf tribal/typal decks don't usually have an issue with amassing a large army of elves to do your bidding. Luckily for your opponents, since you have to tap Lathril to activate this life-draining ability, you can't do it multiple times in a turn. Oh, wait. The last card on this list is a card that until recently hovered around the $10 range, but recent reprints in Commander Legends and Commander Masters have brought it to under $1. I'm talking about Yoriko, the Tiger's Shadow. Yoriko is enraging to play against for some very different reasons, both of which have to do with her abilities. First, she has the very unique distinction of being the only card in the game with Commander Ninjutsu, which means you should never really have to worry about paying Commander tax to put her into play. Sure, you need to have an unblocked creature to do this, but if you build a deck around unblockable creatures, this should never be an issue. That brings me to Yoriko's second ability. Usually one of the main issues with combat-based decks is that you have multiple opponents, so dealing enough damage to take everyone out can be a hassle. But her second ability helps with that by being able to directly deal damage to each opponent. So a ninja tribal slash typal deck with some unblockable creatures seems to be the way to go. It sounds almost too easy, and the deck practically builds itself. There's also the fact that Yoriko is in Dimir colors, which means that you have access to both good card draw and good creature removal. Basically, you can fill your hand with fuel and remove opposing blockers and/or threats easily. That sounds like a dream for you and a nightmare for your friends slash opponents. Come to think of it, Yoriko is so cheap to buy now that I might just have to add it to my budget commander precons. So that wraps it up for part 2 of my 5 commanders under $5 that will make your friends hate playing you series. Remember that with every new set that's released, there is potential for either a reprint that brings an old, high-priced commander down in value, or a completely new card with potential to make this list. So here's to hoping for either one or even both of these to happen in the near future. Thanks for watching, and
May the Schwartz be with you.